You're watching Channel 4, EFL Economics for Life with me, Sadie Couric, Katie Couric's long-lost sister. Tonight we have our guest speaker, Alfred Marshall, the author of Principles of Economics, legend, economist, and family man. Alfred Marshall, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. So Alfred, tell us a bit about your life.
Well, I was born on July 26, 1842, in London, England.
Cheerio.
Oh, darling. Well, I attended St. John's College, and I originally was studying to be a clergyman, but upon learning more about the economy, I decided that it would be in my best interest, and the world at large's best interest, to study the economy. So I eventually became a professor of political economy there at the school, and I wrote books in my spare time. I held lectures. Then I got married and I left the university. I continued writing. Don't fret. And in 1881 I started my masterpiece, The Principles of Economics,
as we all know,
which I am widely known by today.
So please tell us about that book.
Okay, so The Principles of Economics. It focused on three things largely. The first would be supply and demand.
Of course.
The second would be marginal utility.
How people live without it.
Of course. And the third one would be the cost of production. Obviously. So I talked about how these three things were intertwined, how they work together, and I also talked about how changes in the world, in the environment, in people, affects the prices of the prices in the economy and those three things that I previously had mentioned.
Exactly. So, fascinating. Can you tell us more?
Sure. I represented the silent majority, the people who were too afraid to speak up for themselves, the people who were afraid of the state of the economy at the present, because the theories at the time did not take into account changes. And as we know, the economy is always changing. And they didn't take into account that things change and prices change and changes affect prices. So I took it upon myself to explain those changes.
Fascinating. So, that was very, very considerate of you.
Yeah, and I also, after the book came out, I held huge lectures, and my lectures were seldom empty. They were always full. And all my pupils gathered from around, and until the 1940s, my book was read by everyone, from people in England, where I'm from, to people in the United States. It was a must-read. Everyone who was into the economy had to read this book.
So, can you give us an example of one of your many important principles?
I would love to. One of the principles that I focus on a lot, that I came up with, would be elasticity of demand. Now, elasticity of demand takes into account how prices are affected by the elasticity of what it is. For example, let me explain that better. Things could be either inelastic or elastic. If people will buy things at any price, it is called inelastic, because people are going to buy it whether it's expensive or whether it's cheap, and they're going to buy it the same amount no matter what. It's things that are necessary commodities, such as, I don't know, like eggs. You need eggs. You're always going to need the same amount of eggs, so you're always going to buy eggs. Then there's also elastic things, which change with the price. And people will buy either more or less depending on the price.
Extremely, yes. So what makes something elastic or inelastic?
Well, let me give you some examples of some elastic things.
That would be great for the audience.
There's four things, mainly, that make up an elastic item. Not like a bouncy ball, of course. An elastic demand item. So the first one would be a luxury. Let's say, pieces of jewelry. You don't need them to survive, but they're nice to have.
Exactly.
If you see $1 million diamond, you are not going to buy it because you don't need it if you don't have the money.
Exactly.
But let's say you're walking down the street and you see a gold chain, $1, why not? Why not? You're going to buy things if they're cheap. They're luxuries. And the next thing we're going to talk about is a durable item, such as a refrigerator, a washing machine, things that you need in your everyday life, But since you have one, you're not likely to replace it if it's very expensive. So if you have a working washing machine, you're not just going to replace it for something really expensive if you don't need it.
Right.
You know, if it's not broken, why buy a new one? The next thing we're going to talk about is things that have a large percentage of your income, like a house or a car or boat or an airplane, things like that.
Exactly.
Like, you are going to be very careful with your money if you're going to be spending a lot of it. You want to get the best deal possible. Yeah, so you are going to be very careful on price. Prices go down, it's time to buy a house. Prices go up, it's time to wait it off and save a little bit. And the last thing I want to talk about are things that you can easily substitute. For example, let's talk about the meat market. Steak, really expensive. But you got to feed your family. You got to get them the protein. So why buy steak when you can buy chicken? That's a lot cheaper than steak.
Of course it is.
So elastic things are things that you're going to buy it if it's cheap. You're not going to buy it if it's expensive. And that's basically the difference between elastic and inelastic demand.
Beautifully said. So what is the significance of demand elasticity?
Well, it's very, very important because knowing whether an object is elastic or inelastic is going to be a big reason why you make prices what they are. Let's talk about, for example, you own a bus company and you want to increase the fare from 50 cents to like $1.
Oh my God.
So you want to know whether it's inelastic or elastic. If it's inelastic, that means people are going to go on this bus no matter what. They got to get to work. So if it's inelastic, you can raise the price. You're going to have the same amount of people, big revenue. But if it's elastic, you can raise the price, but nobody's going to come on your bus anymore, and you're going to have less revenue. So you need to know this beforehand before raising your prices.
Well put, well put. So people have been wondering for a really long time, particularly myself, if supply or demand is more important in determining price. What are your thoughts on this?
That is an awesome question. A question which I did talk about in my book. This could be easily explained using a scissor. Does anyone around here have a scissor? Oh, thank you. So we have this simple, scissor. The blades of the scissor are used to cut paper. I'm going to call this blade supply, this blade demand. Now, if you hold supply still, but you increase demand, you're going to cut the paper. Hold demand still, increase supply, you're going to cut the paper too. Cut the paper either way. You cut the paper, you change the price. So basically, supply and demand both change the price equally. It doesn't matter which one. When they work together, that works too. But they're going to affect it the same way, and that's what I've always taught my pupils, that one is not more important than the other.
Very well put. Great example. Thank you for being here, Alfred Marshall.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. You're watching EFL Channel 4 Economics for Life with Sadie Couric. Good night, everybody.